Because it sounds better. It just sounds better. Flat out sounds better. The digital world is like fluorescent lighting. It's bright. You can see everything very clearly, and it's like, oh, wow. The analog world, more so the tape world, it's more like the way cool lava light. It's warmer. It's smoother. It doesn't have those artifacts in the upper register that hurt your ears when you start applying some power. They almost always pick the tape. Just because it's smoother, it's warmer. It sounds better. You can turn it up louder.
The Fidelity Exchange. Real conversations for people who take listening seriously.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Fidelity Exchange. I'm Drew Baird, founder of Moon Audio, and today I'm sitting down with Dick Hodgin, owner and chief engineer of Osceola Recording Studio right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Dick's been in the music business for 40 years, producer, engineer, manager, and yes, he's worn pretty much every hat there. He's worked for people like Tech Nine, Lynyrd Skynyrd, J. Cole, and he's got lots of stories you won't believe. Dick, welcome to the show.
I don't believe part of those stories. I can't believe they happened to me. Thank you for having me.
So you moved to the Triangle in 1982 from South Carolina. What was it about the area that made you think this is where I need to be for recording?
Well, not so much for recording, but just for the music business in general. In 1982, I was living in Greenville, South Carolina, which had a small music scene, but not necessarily anything to write home about, set the world on fire. There were some acts that came out of South Carolina, specifically around the Spartanburg area. Marshall Tucker was a big band from South Carolina. Garfield Rush was another band. They didn't get as far as Marshall Tucker, but we were trying to circle out and get outside gigs for the band Moon Pie that I was representing. And we called everybody that would pick up the phone. Hey, can we come? Can we play? Can we open? Can we headline? Whatever. And so we started looking at the map, and we started looking at, Charlotte, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and of course, Raleigh. So we begged. There was a club here, and there was a historic club called the Pier in the 80s. And I called and got the owner on the phone, and somehow or another she liked me, or I didn't piss her off or anything, but she offered us an opening slot for a band called Arrogance, which was, we didn't even know who they were. We had never heard of them. So we leave our little humble home in Greenville, South Carolina, and we drive up, and we got to the Pier, which was at the Cameron Village. What used to be Cameron Village is called the Village District now. And they had a subway. They had an underground uh, shopping area, club area that had a bunch of clubs in it with a lot of different kind of music and stuff like that. And so we got there for sound check, I guess, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And we go to start to load into the Pier, and there's probably 3 to 400 people already in line at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to get to this 9 o'clock show in the Pier. And we're like, what the hell is this? This is crazy. Are the Beatles playing here tonight? This is ridiculous. So we did our show. It was great. We made a lot of friends and stuff, but we drove home that night saying, that's a real music scene. That's what's going on right there. That band, they had a small record deal, not a big one. I think it was Warner Curb Records. But up there, up here in Raleigh, they were just amazing. Then we found out that there were other bands that did that kind of business, where an average night for a local band, 3, 4, 500 people at the popular clubs. So we felt like, wow, that's happening. And that's kind of why we decided to move up here. Another reason was that Moon Pie was seen that night by the president of Dolphin Records, which was an offshoot from Record Bar, the big record bar chain. He liked them, and he offered them a very small deal to do a record. And at that particular time, I was doing music part time, managing part time, and working in the studio part time. And the it came to the point where I needed to make a decision in my career, and I was either going to continue to design packaging machinery, or I was going to quit that and move to Raleigh and get into the music business full time. and so I do.
And it's crazy, I never heard or knew about Raleigh in terms of music back in the, 80s, 90s, even the 2000s. I mean, I moved here in 96, but, I keep hearing about this legendary triangle scene, and triangle is Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, for those that you don't know, back in the 80s and 90s. I mean, I really want to learn more about the history there. I mean, why do you think the scene was so crazy here? I mean, it's not Nashville or, something, or New York, or, you know what I mean?
I think it was just a hotbed of talent at that particular time, and that particular talent was speaking to the local audiences, and things kind of snowballed over there was a weekly magazine, an entertainment magazine called The Spectator, and the guy that was the entertainment director of The Spectator, Godfrey Cheshire, he was like the godfather of the music scene here in North Carolina. Knew everybody, everybody knew Godfrey and stuff, and he talked a guy from the BBC to come to Raleigh, North Carolina, and do a BBC special on the music scene in North Carolina. And you can go back and you can look at those. Look up something on YouTube called Combo Land, which was a record that was grown out of this whole thing with all of these bands and what they were doing and stuff like that. It's an amazing historical capture of what was going on at that particular time.
So, over 40 years, you've been a manager, a producer, an engineer, booking agent, publicist, tour manager. I mean, pretty much everything. What did wearing all those hats sort of teach you about the music business that you couldn't have just learned staying in one lane?
Well, you learn what everybody else does. You learn what everybody else on the team does. So as a manager, you're pretty much the you're the head coach. You're the head coach. The band is the team. So as a head coach, you have assistant coaches. You have strength coach. You have an offensive coach, a defensive coach. You have a special teams coach. Da da da. But you also have, as a manager, you have a booking agent, a tour manager. You have a record company, A&R person, an attorney, a publisher, a publicist. So doing all those jobs gave me a great overview of how those jobs are done and what to look out when you're looking to get those people to do those jobs for you. So what it taught me is that it's very difficult to do them all. So what you want to do is you want to delegate, and you want to delegate to people who really know how to do those particular things. And it's a trial and error kind of thing. Sometimes you get on with people, a publisher or publicist and stuff like that. It works out. Sometimes it doesn't, and you move on to other people. But that whole and remember that all this was back before the internet. There was no internet back there. All there was telephone and what they this thing they called long distance, where you had to pay if you were going to call out outside your little area. So there was a lot of telephoning and networking to be done with all of these people. But as you grew and as your client grew and got more into the professional side of things, you learned that all of these assistant coaches, they all have to be good at their jobs, and the head coach has to coordinate all of those assistant coaches' activities to give the band a chance to compete.
And so, you wore all those hats. What made you want to get back into the studio side after all those years on the business side?
I was trying to do that on the side anyway, because I just love being in the studio. I started out doing live sound because the band that I was working with, I just couldn't stand some of the times that I would go to a club and a sound guy would just miss the boat, would not mix them well, and oh my God, he didn't even have the background vocals up and stuff like this. So I'd just complain and complain, and the band would say, "Well, why don't you do something about it?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know anything about this." So they had a church that they rented, an old church, and they would set up on the altar and. Uh, we had back then bands had their own PA systems, and so they had scavenged together a pretty decent PA. And so I got in there, and on practice nights, which was 2 nights a week, I would be in there learning how to do live sound. Then I got out and went to gigs with them, found out that was a lot harder than it looked to just walk into a completely new setup and get the sound that you wanted correctly without all of the issues that that particular sound system had working or non-working. And then after a few years of that, I started to complain about the band's recordings that they were doing at a local studio, and, I said, this should have been better. This have been well, why don't you just come in the studio with us and everything?" And so I just kinda bullshitted my way into the studio with the band and, shut my mouth off at times when I should have just been just shut up, and, but once I got in there, I said, "This is for me. This is what I wanna do. I'm gonna learn how to do this really well." And I had been in bands. I had been in bands when I was a teenager and stuff, and found out, unfortunately, that, in Columbia, South Carolina, where I was living at that time as a teenager getting ready to go into college, I found out that chicks loved our band not because we were really good, we were just some good-looking guys, and and they came out and said, "Yay!" and stuff like that. So I eventually kind of it dawned on me when I started meeting people and other bands, people who could really sing, people who could really, really play, and people who could write much better songs than I could write. I mean, just far and away better than I was. So I said, "Well, you." I'm looking in the mirror and I'm like, "Well, you don't really have any talent." You know, these people have talent. They have special talent. And you can see the difference between somebody who works hard and gets to be mediocre and somebody who doesn't have to work hard at all and just smokes you, playing an instrument or something like that. So I went to college, and when I got out of college, got into the music thing and stuff. And after I started producing, producing, and working with bands in the studio, I started working with other bands, not just my band. But I talked some bands, I'd go see them live, or I might wind up mixing them live, and they would appreciate the mix and say, "Hey, do you do studio work? We'd like for you to come in and mix us, or help us, or produce us and stuff." And I said, "Yeah." And so after a few years of that, I discovered that I did have a talent, and my talent is working with talent. And everybody can't do that. So that was my particular talent, to be able to work with talent. It's kinda like agile coaching. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's like the person who brings everybody together and gets them to be copacetic and all the facets of making a recording, and at the end, make it sound better than anybody expected. So that was what kinda got me rolling more so uh on the audio side than the management side. And then I was managing a band called Craven Miller, and they were on, I mean, being a manager is a thankless job. I'll tell you that right now. It's like a basketball team. So when the team wins, yay, team is great. Team loses, we got to fire that manager. We got to fire that coach. Well, the coach is not the one that bounced the ball out of bounds or missed the free throws or whatever, but he's the one that's got all of this talent. It must be him. So, moving through management of various bands, and there's, obstacles all the time with the artist reaching some modicum of success. And I'm sure I made some missteps, as well as some of the artists that I was working with. Um, but it was the kind of thing where I was just kind of getting fed up with that thankless position, and I was gaining more thanks and attributes on the audio side with working with bands and things like that. So, the band Craven Melon, they made this great record and 1990, I want to 98 or something. And Seagram's uh, bought Mercury Records and a couple of other records, and they just kicked 50 or so bands off of the label. And I just said, "F this." I'm just gonna go make records. And so I came to work at Osceola Studios in 2001. This will be my 25th anniversary with the studio.
And so I have to ask about a nickname you've received. So you're known as the Dream Assassin, and I heard the origin of this story involves a very uncomfortable silence at South by Southwest. Tell everybody what happened.
Well, it was. I mean, I'd been on a lot of panels and for like DIY panels and um, producing panels, management panels, grassroots organization and promotion and stuff like that. I forgot which panel this was, but I think I was on it with a bunch of managers and um, these other guys that were on these other people that were on the stand with me at the studio, they were like, "Oh, you guys are gonna need you're gonna get a good accountant and get your money in the right place, and you're gonna, you get your record label and your record deal and all this stuff is gonna be great for you." And they were just pumping all of these kids up. There were like 3 or 400 kids out there, and this was when South by Southwest was fairly new. And It got down to me, and I just looked at them, and I looked at the audience, and I said, "Well, I hate to break this to you, but everybody in here is not gonna be a rock star." And I thought I was gonna get a big laugh. No. The air went out of the room. You could hear a pin drop, and luckily, the moderator of the panel, he looked down there and he said, "Well, now that we've heard from the dream assassin." So he coined the phrase off the cuff, and I don't even remember. It might have been Jamie Cohen. I don't remember who it was, but and everybody in the audience who knew me, they wanted to make that stick. And then a couple of entertainment weeklies and stuff like that, they picked up on it, published it here, I think in the Spectator and down in Columbia and stuff like that. And so, and listen, if somebody wants to make a if they want to make a nickname stick on you, there's nothing you can do about it because they're going to drive it into the ground until everybody says, "Yeah, that's the Dream Assassin."
Oh man. So I got to come over to your studio a little while ago, and oh man, I absolutely enjoyed it. I mean, I could do that all day long every day. And you've got that legendary Studer analog recording system in there. I got this small scale Revox B77 behind me. And in 2026, when everybody else went digital, 20 years ago, why did you keep the analog gear?
Because it sounds better. It just sounds better. Flat out sounds better. The digital world is like fluorescent lighting. Okay. It's bright. You can see everything very clearly, and it's like, oh, wow. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the analog world, more so the tape world, um, it's more like the way cool lava light. It's warmer, it's smoother. It doesn't have those artifacts in the upper register, upper mids and highs that hurt your ears when you start applying some power from an amplifier into a speaker. So to me, it's always been the best sound on the world in the world is on the 2-inch Studer and subsequently on half-inch masters when I mix down. Now, the digital world offers up the greatest innovation since multi-track recording, and that's the ability to see and to be able to move in real time the audio from track to track to track, the ability to copy and paste, the ability to always have it on grid and see the timing issues and things like that. So, uh, you get sucked in to how great those assets are when you're recording, when you're editing, when you're mixing, not to mention things like pitch correction and stuff. And the only pitch correction we had on the Studer was if a client couldn't hit a high note and just kept repeatedly failing to get that high note, you would take the very speed, slow it down, which dropped the pitch, and they would hit that high note. You would punch them in right when they got to that note or maybe the phrase, and then you would put it back up to regular speed, and there's your high note on key. That was about the only pitch correction you could do on the Studer. Um, so so many Jedi mind tricks in digital that you can do. So what I wind up doing for the most part, unless somebody requests straight to analog, no digital anything. Um, I record in high resolution Pro Tools. Um, I do all my Jedi mind tricking, editing, and everything, and getting everything exactly the way I want the sound to flow. And then maybe I'll take the drums and the guitars and I'll throw them off onto the Studer and throw them right back in and line it back up, just to get that sound. Another thing that I found out is that I can record in high level high resolution Pro Tools, and then when I get it out of the box, I can sum it through a tube compressor, and I can send that mix over to the half-inch tape machine so that we get partial tape compression, not on every single channel, but on the overall mix, which does 80% of what tracking to the Studer does. It's interesting that a lot of the bands that come in, the ones that really want to stick to tracking on the Studer, uh, gospel and heavy metal, those people understand what tape compression really adds to their particular pieces of music, their individual tracks of music.
But, when we were talking, when I was in there, I mean, everybody, you did some examples where you went back and forth between, an end digital product and then, well, from what I understand, what I remember, you keep everything analog until the end, until you have to do all of your mixing, and you do that all in Pro Tools. And then, like you said, sometimes you'll send it through the tape to get some of that, juju, if you will, from the tape machine back. But then you also said, every time someone comes in, regardless of whether it's metal or gospel, and you play back two different versions, they always end up liking the analog tape version better. But then they usually stick with the digital version, which doesn't make sense to me, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the just remember though that everything is analog through the console, the microphones, everything is analog until it hits the converters. The converters changes the analog sound into ones and zeros and prints the ones and zeros in a hard drive for you to manipulate through Pro Tools. So what I do is I make sure at the end, after I've done the mixing and we really like what's coming out of the monitors on the final mix and stuff, I'll take that same mix and I'll print that one into just two more channels in Pro Tools, just straight back into Pro Tools. And then I'll take that same mix and I'll send it to the half-inch tape, and then it goes right back into Pro Tools as well. So it's still back in a digital form, but it's been smeared on to the analog tape. And so when the client takes it home, they get home, they can listen to it on different speakers and headphones and TV devices and sound bars and stuff like that. They can kind of A B and see which one they like. They almost always pick the tape, just because it's smoother, it's warmer, it sounds better. You can turn it up louder.
Moon Audio, we're seeing this incredible resurgence of people caring about how music sounds, and not just what music sounds like. They're buying high-end headphones, they're buying quality cables, they're buying turntables. Physical media is just exploding. What are you seeing from the production side in terms of music and how it's being consumed?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that people are starting to care a little bit more about how it sounds at the end. Unfortunately, it's like still everybody listens to their iPhone. Everybody just listens to their iPhone. They listen to a speaker out in the open, or they listen to their earbuds. Um, they actually Bluetooth their iPhone into their TV sound bar. Okay, so everybody has a different way of how they consume most of their music. However, most people, and I hope this continues, will notice that when you put a vinyl record on through a certain sound system with a physical amp, okay, separate from the speakers, that you get a pleasing feel in the audio range about how that sounds. I do think that the vinyl explosion, a lot of it is just kind of faddish. So so some people realize it sounds better. Other people don't care. They just like to say they got a turntable and they love buying records. Now the other side of that, I will say this as a sidebar. The 12 by 12 graphic of art that comes with your record, with your vinyl record, oh, it's so much better than looking at it on a frickin' iTunes screen or a 4 by 4 CD, whatever. And that's one of the lost things about records is the data is that you lost amazing pieces of art that were done not by AI, although some of them are done by AI now. But that was another piece of the puzzle where people would go to record stores and they would just like scan through record after record after record, and they may have never heard of this band, but the art caught them first and got them to listen, and then they liked it, and it became a thing. So I do think that I mean almost well, all my clients when they leave with the mixes, they go and they play them on a lot of different sound systems. Okay, most of them tell me that they're listening in the car. Cars don't even have CD players anymore. The stereo systems in cars are much more sophisticated now. Doesn't necessarily mean they're better, but they are more sophisticated. And you just Bluetooth your digital crappy little MP3 into your car, and that's what you're going to judge. Not only my work, but you're going to judge your own work on what you hear in comparison to other artists that you hear who are mainstream artists and stuff like that. So you're already setting yourself up, you know, to have a comparison situation. And it's the kind of thing where you can't cover all of those bases, but you can cover most of them. You try to cover most of them so that when your mix leaves, you want it to translate on as many systems as possible with small little adjustments, you know.
And you told me something fascinating. You know, you said in 2024, out of like 15 albums you made, only 2 went to vinyl. And then in 2025, you know, you had something like 50% of 15, you know, albums went to vinyl. How's it going so far in 2026?
Only 3 so far, so I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, but only 3 so far. Now some of them, are finished and are talking about doing vinyl later. Many unsigned artists are on pretty strict budgets, and vinyl is not cheap, um, and so it's the kind of thing where when they start looking at, the cost difference, sometimes it's cost prohibitive still a little bit. But it depends on and I tell everybody, I say, "Look, when they start talking about doing vinyl," I say, "You go ask your friends, how many of your friends have a turntable? Not just Joe Blow music lover out here there who you might get to hear you on Spotify, but how many of your friends have a turntable and actually buy records and listen to them?" Most people will come back and say, "Not many, not many."
I mean, it's just interesting getting back to the artwork. And, you know, I've been watching a lot of documentaries and, you know, things on like Led Zeppelin and CCR and all those guys. And it was absolutely amazing, like you said, how much effort was put into the artwork. I mean, it was really important. And I almost see today as that artwork on that album is branding for the artist because, you know, how do these smaller people, and I know vinyl costs more money, but you have to look at it from a marketing standpoint. You know, they're when you have these shows like the Grammys where you see the same people year after year after year, you've got to find ways as a smaller band to sort of, you know, get your name out there. And vinyl is the perfect way to do it because so many people are flipping through vinyl now. And if you can do a smashing great job on the artwork, people are going to see that. And half the time, I'll buy a record just because the artwork is really cool because I'm intrigued by, well, if they put this much time and effort into the artwork, they must be creative and they put something into the music. Now, you know, maybe there's some of them that aren't that great, but still, you know, it's worth a gamble to me sometimes.
I totally agree. I mean, I love the fact that it's another facet of what you're after as a music consumer. So there's a visual aspect to the attraction to that particular record, and you know, I mean, I love records. I love going through my old records and looking at the artwork. I mean, when you think about before CDs, how everybody had to compete in that category with art as well as the sonic part of the record. It was amazing that some of the greatest records have, I mean, historic, mind-numbing, graphic representations that stick in your mind forever.
And, I've learned from going to, like, I went to a record store day at School Kids Records here in Raleigh. I went to other couple of record stores and I talked to them about, CD and vinyl sales. And it's really interesting, how much they've exploded. And even last year, CD sales have doubled. And I was like, who's buying the CDs? And, they've got a lot of used CDs. And you got to think about it this way. Like, yeah, we were talking about, cars don't have CD players now, but all these young kids now are buying clunkers. And guess what those clunkers have? CD players. And these kids are getting tired of just paying. It's almost like paying rent for an apartment and you don't own anything. They're tired of paying for streaming. They want to actually own something. So they're buying these CDs to own a piece of, a piece of the puzzle, which is, I think is fantastic. And hopefully that's going to then turn them into, like you said, now being able to maybe afford a record player and then a system and so forth. I mean, all of my kids have a turntable, and then I got them a streaming speaker that they can connect the turntable straight to, so they don't need anything else but the speaker and the turntable. And they're buying vinyl, not just they're buying it more from like a nostalgic, like it's
Right.
vintage and it's old like you, Dad. You know what I mean? And it's really exciting. It is
It's
it
old
is a little
like
bit
you,
of a
Dad.
fad, but hey, I'll take it. Yeah, it's old like you, Dad. I'll take the fad if it improves and improves, the sales of vinyl and pushes everybody back into music and pushing money back into the artists. I mean, the poor artists are starving. I mean, it's, in hearing, like I went to see Need to Breathe, what was it? I think it was last month. And they were talking about if they had to start right now, they'd never make it. I mean, it's too difficult. It's so hard, so expensive. There's too many people. There's too many people doing it on the internet for free on their laptops, and whether they're good or not, but it's so tough now.
Just go online and look at all the people that are using Suno to create lavish, finished pieces of music that, a lot of the buying public, they don't give a crap if it came out of a computer or not. They just like the song. That's all they give. They just like the song. And who cares if it's stolen, which is what AI does, is it goes out and steals processes and, things that have already been done together and then puts them together, for your particular need. So it's the kind of thing where, I mean, finding revenue streams as an artist, that's the game now. That is absolutely the game, is how are you going to turn your efforts into revenue streams? And oh my god, there's 1,000 different ways to do that. Um, so, I mean, again, getting back to being a manager and figuring all that out and working that, from a control standpoint of view. No, when I'm finished my record, I'll pat you on the back when walk out the studio door, and I'll say, "Go get 'em, man. Go get 'em. Good luck." Yeah, because it's hard.
So let's talk about Osceola today. So you've been at this since 2001. You've got an incredible client list. You've got gear that most studios don't have anymore. Tell me about a day in the life with you at the studio.
Well, if I'm tracking a new band, let's say that they'll come in and maybe they'll use the house drums, maybe they'll bring their own stuff in, and we get set up. Hopefully, I've got a demo of what they want to do, and I've got an idea of kind of what they want to sound like. Um, I enjoy watching them watch me set everything up, with my selection of microphones, my microphone techniques and placements, and what I use on this and what I use on that, and they'll ask me questions about that and stuff like that. Um, so after we get all set up, I say, "Hey, let's just warm up a little bit. Let's practice and go to it." Well, I start recording from the word go because you never know what you're gonna grab on that first little warm up and stuff like that. And I do quite a bit of quick, uh, manipulation to where, when they walk in to listen to what they've just been kind of fooling around with, messing around with, it's gotta sound great. It's gotta sound awesome. New people who haven't been in the studio before don't really know. They have a apprehension about what's going on. The drummer, "Oh, what's my drums gonna sound like?" A bass player, "Oh, I kinda is he gonna be able to get me a good bass sound?" and stuff like that. And then they walk into the control room, and I hit playback on just the crap that they recorded, and it's like, "Holy, I'm gonna sound great." And my bass is gonna sound awesome. So now we've removed them worrying about my job. They don't have to worry about my job anymore. They got to worry about their job. Now they can get in and they can start to play and get together and start, developing as a group and stuff like that. Uh, so on a general day, do a couple of 3 songs, get the rhythm tracks uh, tracked, drums, bass, and a rhythm instrument, then start layering things and we've got the rhythm tracks done now. You guys can go have lunch or leave or whatever you want to do. And then get the other people, guitar players, um, get their 50 or so solos that they want to do on that one song because they're never happy. And then start working up and layering the rest of the stuff, maybe get the keys out and add some stuff and work with the keyboard player directly one on one and everything. Personally, I like to send the band home with a rough mix of their music and one mix of just the music and one mix of the music with the singer just doing a scratch vocal, not really caring, just putting the vocal in as a placeholder in there so that they can hear what their song is starting to sound like. They can start to hear what it sounds like. Then I give that singer sample of what he sounded like just off the cuff and a scratch vocal they sound like. And then also give them just the music track that they're going to be singing to so that they can go home and practice with the actual track that they're going to be singing with. And then we come back in and do a vocal session, and we really key on the vocals, the quality, and repetition is our friend. Get multiple tracks, cut those up, comp those pieces to where I've got a great finished lead track, um, and then maybe move on to background vocals and stuff. Then we do kind of a rough mix, and we say, "Here's everything playing. Let's make sure we like everything before we go to the trouble of like fine tuning exactly where it needs to sit in the mix and stuff like that." So that can take a day, you know, to do most of that. Other times I'm in here and I'll do a hip hop thing. Somebody will come in, they'll bring some beats, they'll jump in the vocal booth, and I'll play the beats back for them. They'll do some hip hop stuff. Other times I'm doing books, like audio books. They'll come in and they'll sit down, and sometimes they'll have a remote coach from New York or the publishing company or somewhere that we set it up, and everybody's in the session, and I just sit and record it, and the vocal coach, I mean, the remote coach has me comp or save or put little notes on the thing, and they'll do a book. Um, I mean, there's a lot of different cool things that I get to do. Sometimes I'm doing transfers from old tapes because I have a Studer and I have a half-inch machine and I have a quarter-inch machine, and a lot of older artists have all of this stuff that's just sitting there getting moldy, and they're not going to be able to recover it. So they bring it to me and we get it baked, and then we clean it up and we transfer it. Also have some uh, uh, older digital transfer equipment that I can use as well. So I do a lot of things here.
So when I visited, you had an incredible wall of album covers. I mean, you had Hootie and Blowfish, Echoed Smith, Big Daddy Kane, which is awesome. I didn't even realize he was from this area. J. Cole. Tell me about working with some of these big names. Is there a lot of ego going on, or are you sort of like you have to be like Phil Jackson to for the Chicago Bears, calm a lot of egos and get them all sort of working right together? And
Well, I mean, it depends on what you do. When you're talking about working with famous people, is that what you're talking about?
yeah, 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 the heavy hitters. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those people are normal people there who are working on their craft still. Um, People, one interviewer asked me, said, "How do you handle uh, a famous ego? How do you handle that?" And I said, "Easy, one word: playback. That's all it takes. Just put it on playback." Everybody knows who the problem is. Everybody, if it's a band, everybody knows where the problem is in the room. And if it's the egotistical artist, you don't have to say anything. They already know that they're not hitting the bar. Okay, that they're not doing as well as they should, or you know what, that's a crappy line. I need to rewrite some of this stuff or whatever. But playback really tells on an artist, and you got to remember that these people are are just people. They're just rich and famous people who have had a lot of success, but they still, when they get in the studio, there's a kind of a work format. And some people like to have the ego as part of that, and other people leave the ego at the door, which is great.
You have to retell the Leonard Skinner story, the VH1 special. What happened there?
So VH1 did a special. They did a 4th of July special with Leonard Skinner up at Atlantic City. I don't know exactly where it was, big outdoor thing and everything. And they were, they had all these huge VH1 crew, cameras and everything, and they recorded it all. And they got all the files back to LA, and the vocals were just terrible. I think they'd gone out and imbibed a bit the night before,
Partied
and the
hard.
vocals were, oh, it was just terrible. And it wasn't necessarily the mics or anything like that. It was just they were just bad. They weren't very good. They had
Yeah.
who's the Three Doors Down guy that just passed? Brad?
Oh,
Yeah, Brad. So Three Doors Down was their opening act, and he came out and he had sung. I think he sang 2 songs with them on stage, and he was he was not good either. So the voices were cracked and they were slurred, and they were missing stuff and everything. So they said, "This is we can't put this out. We can't do this." And they figured out that it just needed to be retracked. And so they were coming through town, and one of the people, I think in their management office or something, knew who I was, and said, "Well, Dick Hodgin has a studio in Raleigh. Let's just let him go in there and recut these vocals." And so they called me up, and they got a couple of days, and they came in. Um, at first, we put a monitor up in the vocal room, in the vocal booth, uh, so that they could see themselves and the visual of what they were doing. Well, that just messed them up. They were trying to sing to the video instead of trying to sing the song the way they normally did. So I said, let's just get rid of that. And then I said, I've got the vocal track here. I see what you did. Let's just sing it, sing it like you do when you're listening to this music, sing it. And come find out, these guys, they basically were doing it like a template every single night. It was exactly the same. Now we left the banter in between songs and them talking and hooting and howling and all that stuff. And we left all of that in there from the original track, but we replaced all those tracks and a little vocal line, and it worked out really good. So, and I challenge anybody to watch that special and say, "Hey, that's not right. That's not quite right."
It was funny at the beginning of the interview. I don't remember what brought up Joan Jett, but I grew up in New York, and I was a block away from the little Irish bar that they filmed "I Love Rock and Roll" in, and I was there that day when they were filming. It was fun. Um, Go ahead, tell your story about Joan Jett. I thought it was hysterical.
Was it a big shoot?
Well, I mean, there were the amount of equipment they had outside was insane, right? But this is a real small Irish bar that they filmed in. I mean, there was not a lot of room and not a lot of people inside, but they had, a lot of stuff outside, that's for sure.
So, I mean, my run-in with Joan Jett is that I was managing this band out of Greenville, Moon Pie, and they got a chance to open for Joan Jett and the Black Hearts in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so we met them there that night. It didn't mean much, but later, when Craven Mellon was on Mercury, uh, Danny Goldberg and the product manager, I forgot who he was, or promotion manager, radio guy, they wanted some independent radio promotion done, and they hired Joan Jett's manager and partner. And I can't remember his name right now, but he was legendary for doing all these crazy things. I mean, he would send baseballs to radio stations, and on the baseball it'd say, "Do you have the balls to play these songs by Joan Jett or Kramer, whoever he's promoting and everything?" So I went to his office just to watch him work, and it was like going into like this vintage old New York, piles of paper everywhere, tiny little crook back in an office, just unbelievable. You couldn't even imagine being in there, much less living in there day to day. And I sat down with him and talked about it. And Joan came in, and we started talking and stuff like that. And so she said, "Come on, let's get high." And I'm like, "I'm good." I said, I got to work. I'm working." She said, "Ain't nobody gonna know." I'm like, "Well, they will if I'm high." They'll know. So we got high and we started just talking about baseball and stuff, and she's a big Baltimore fan, and, but she was just I mean, she was as cool as as you'd want, but just, she was not trying to, uh, uh, big star me or anything like that, and, it was really interesting. She's cool.
Well, last question. Tell us about some of the music you're listening to right now. Maybe you've got something back there on that mixer you could play for a second, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. I gotta look at it, though. Hold on, so it's gonna get white for a second.
Yeah, yeah.
This is Lauren Nicole that I'm working on. They're an artist, out of North Carolina.
Don't like showing this side of me that cries in the night and makes you worry.
I can't play the whole thing for you because it's not released yet,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean, that kind of reminds me of early Joan Jett kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it got my head bopping. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's amazing how much good music there is around here in the Triangle. In fact, when I came to the studio at time, yeah, I mean, the guy that you played for me when I first came over, that I think you said he owns a bunch of car lots in North Carolina. I mean, that first track you played for me, I mean, literally blew my mind. I mean, it was phenomenal, and I can't wait for that to come out. I can't. What was his name again?
I think it comes out today. Scott Manus. I think he's calling himself Thomas Scott Manus. Yeah. But that record is today the 20. Yeah, the day's 29. I think it comes out today. He's one of the clients that is going to do CD, digital release first, then CDs, and then I think he is going to do vinyl. So he's got a bunch of songs. So he had like 18.
Yeah, and what was interesting about him is every song sounded like a different genre, which was really cool. One of his songs sounded like a Bob Dylan song. I mean, I enjoyed listening to that guy.
Thank you, thank you. He'll thank you.
Well, Dick, thank you so much for sitting down with us, and thanks for the studio tour a couple of weeks ago. It's even more impressive in person. This is fantastic. Thank you.
That's great, man. Thanks for having me on. I really was. It's enjoyable to be able to talk about it.
Links to his studio and everything Dick is doing are going to be in the description below. If you're in the Triangle and you care about sound quality, go check out what they're doing. And if you got something out of today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss what's coming up next. We've got more exciting conversations. In fact, we're going to be meeting with The Kitchen with Brett, who actually Dick sends music to remaster for different formats and whatnot. That's going to be coming up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Fidelity Exchange.